Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Susanna Willen. I'm the support geoscientist for Petrosys Europe. And today I'm going to be talking to you about some of the mapping improvements that have been carried out in Pro 2020. So please note that this webinar will be recorded and it will be made available to you in a couple of days' time. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them within the chat log and I will address them at the end of this session. So let's get started and see what improvements we've been added for this year. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a short PowerPoint presentation that's going to run through some of the main features. And then after that, I will carry out a demonstration to show you how you can apply these features within Petrosys PRO. And then I'll finish off with a summary. So I'm going to start off by looking at the new contour segment style control, where you can now apply a consistent style to individual contours that exist across multiple levels. Why is this useful? Well, it allows you to highlight a contact that's distributed across multiple depth levels throughout different structural compartments of a prospect, such as just this compartment, these compartments around this salt dome here. And applying a consistent style to each contour segment that represents a key contact can enable first pass volume assessments, which are simply carried out visually, and can draw attention to the controlling factors of each contact level. So is it purely tectonic, or does the reservoir heterogeneity have a strong influence? So I'll show you how you can add these and you can control the or edit the custom style in the demo later on. The next feature I want to talk to you about is the fact that it's now possible to display a page from a multi-page PDF document within your map. The new Display PDF menu in Mapping brings up a window dialog that allows you to choose the PDF document. This will provide rendering and placement options, allow you to specify the page that you're interested in, and it will show a preview along with any of the document properties. The user has full control over the rotation, background and foreground transparency of the page and can draw this anywhere on the map or within the title bar. So this is a great way of showing additional information within a geospatial context. You could have PDF documents such as this one shown here that shows production over a specified amount of time. You can also have PDF documents that are generated from volumetric calculations, for example, and you can show these within a spatial context around some of your key prospects, for example. For 2020.2, we are hoping to add in support for georeference PDFs. And the display of PDF documents is currently supported in Windows only. So Linux support may be available in a future version. It depends on the amount of feedback we get. So if that's something you're interested in, please do get in touch and we will log that with our developers. In 2020, we can also now directly display DEM and bathymetry data, referred to here as raster files with X, Y, and Z coordinates. This can be displayed in Mapping and the 3D viewer as a colour fill or sun-shaded grid, or a combination of both, and it can be used to complement your regional maps. In previous versions of Pro, you would have to convert this data into the native Petrosys grid format before displaying it. Now, instead, we simply have this raster file option within our data source list of our display grid window within Mapping. So you can now use this, link to this, and it means that you're not going to duplicate your data and you don't have to carry out any additional conversion steps that you would have had to have done in Pro 2019 and earlier. So these data can also be used as an input source for gridding. And some of the file formats supported include DEMs, GeoTIFFs, ECW files, ARC binary grids, and ERDAS Imagine files. If you have a file format that you're not sure whether it can be supported or not, please just within the file selector choose all files and see whether it will work. If it doesn't, get in touch with us and we'll see whether we can do something or expand that capability for you. Okay, so another cool new feature is the fact that we've added in 24 new color gradients, all of which are perceptually equal, accessible for users with color vision deficiencies, and can be interpreted if printed in grayscale. They're a mixture of sequential and diverging gradients, as you can see here. Here's a diverging one that diverges from a white color, and here are some of our sequential gradients up here. You would tend to use a diverging gradient if the underlying data shows a departure from a reference value, which is commonly set to 0. So each end of the gradient will represent a more negative or a more positive value, and I'm going to show you an application of this in the demo. Now, these gradients were created by Fabio Cromeri, a researcher from the University of Oslo. The reason why they were created was to try and encourage scientists to move away from visualizing their data with the rainbow, which is also known as the jet color gradient, because this gradient has a tendency to distort the underlying data and generate artificial boundaries due to inconsistent changes in color brightness and intensity across that gradient range. So you can see some examples here showing the same data but displayed with the rainbow gradient and a perceptually equal gradient here and here. And you can just see the difference in terms of here. We can see a lot more detail in terms of these channelized features around here. And then we can also compare here and see where some boundaries have been created due to sharp changes in color brightness. And when we apply a perceptually equal gradient, we can see that this is actually an artificial boundary. So that's just something to be aware of. Please have an experiment to see what gradient best fits your data, and let us know if you have any feedback. Now, another new feature, this is a relatively small one, but it's also quite useful to know about. So the location map can display a user-defined polygon instead of or as well as the map extent outline now. So we're showing our map extent outline in orange here, but we've also added in a polygon that represents our project boundary. And this polygon here is reflected in the map canvas here. And it may just be a case of where we want to show a regional map, but we also want to focus the users or the viewers' attention to a specific boundary as well. So that could be, yeah, your project boundary, or it could be something like the outline of a 3D seismic survey. So this option has been added to the location tab, and I'll show you where that is in the demo. And a huge range of formats are supported for your polygons. So you can use polygons from a geodatabase, or you can also use standalone files, such as shapefiles, and you can also connect to third-party project connections, so such as Petrosys, Kingdom, or DuggInsight. You can access the polygons within those applications themselves. And lastly, a couple of smaller but useful mapping improvements include the ability to loop, round, or select text via an arbitrary polygon when aligning labels vertically or horizontally within the overpost correction tool. So previously you could only select them via a rectangle, but we had some requests from some users asking whether we could customize this a bit better, so they didn't want a rectangular area, they just wanted to use an arbitrary polygon. So we've added that in. And then the final bullet point is not really a cartographic improvement, but it's worth mentioning if you haven't noticed. And that's the fact that you can now search within your display list. So if you've got huge projects or huge mapping projects, if you select this icon up here, it will open up this section down here where you can just type in the name of a grid or a well that you're looking for, and it will search through that. Okay, so now I'm going to start doing a demo, and I'll start off by showing you some of the improvements that have been made to our gradients and some of the applications in which we'd use different gradients. So in this file here, I've listed a number of different well tie outputs. So just to make sure that you're aware, a well tie is where you're going to be pulling or pushing a grid in a particular direction so that it will honour the intersection with a well zone or a well formation top. So my original data I've chosen to display with the Batlow colour gradient. If you check out Fabio Cremeri's website, this has been referred to as the scientific rainbow, and it's well suited to show structural variation. Now what I'm going to do is I'll show you some results from carrying out a well tie using the extrapolated minimum curvature method. So if I display that on here, I've applied the same gradient using the same minimum and maximum range, and you can see how the overlying structure has changed slightly due to a well tie round here and then also a well tie along this ridge up here. So the tied, we've got our tied grid here, and then we've also got our correction grids. So this will show how much, the correction grids will show how much the original data grid has been pulled up or down to honour the well intersection. So if I turn this off and I'll display the corresponding correction grid here, I've chosen to apply a diverging gradient to this data. So where the white colour centres around our 0 value to indicate no movement. And you can easily see from the colour intensity and hues how much of a vertical shift has been applied to the original interpretation in either a positive or a negative sense. So in this area up here, where you've got our structural grid has been shifted up to shallower levels, and then here it's been pulled down to deeper depths. So you can very quickly, if you set up your colour gradients appropriately, so they show a similar min-max range, and you apply either the correct diverging or a sequential gradient, you can very quickly scroll through how different methods within a well tie will affect your overall structure of your grid. So that's quite important if you're wanting to assess uncertainty. Now, if I just double click, I'll select this grid again, and I'll just double click. And if I select the color gradient selector, I'll just search for gradients that have been stored underneath the name Fabio Cremeri. You'll just see the range of new gradients, which are shown here. So there you go. Okay. Right. The next thing I want to show you is our custom contour styling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into this well over here. So I've got my C5 well around here, and this has recorded a oil water contact level of 1,832 meters depth. Now, I obviously want to highlight that within this fault block and this fault block only, because I don't have any evidence of contact levels potentially in different fault blocks, and I also maybe have contact levels within at different depths at, say, a fault block around here. So what I need to do is, currently my contour increments are being displayed at 20 meter intervals. So I obviously need to first of all display a single contour level. Now that's pre-existing functionality. So if I double click on my grid and underneath my contours tab, I will just turn this off here. We've got this section up here, and again, as I mentioned, this is pre-existing functionality. So I'll just add in my depth level of 1,832 meters. I'll turn it on so it's active, and then I'll click apply. So you see that that contour is now being displayed within this fault block, but one of the problems which a lot of users found is that they didn't want to highlight that depth within their other fault blocks around their grid. So what you can now do is, if I select this contour here, right click and select apply contour style. What it's now done is it's added that contour into this section here, which is called contour selected from map. If I select this one button here, you can see that it's now got one contour segment listed within this section. I can just click OK, and it's also applied a contour line style, which can be defined or changed as you see fit around here. I've added in the prefix and also turned the label on. Now the final thing you just need to do is you just need to deactivate the single contour levels, so it will remove the contours highlighted within the other fault blocks. And then if I just click OK, and I'll just zoom back out, you can see there that we've just got that contour highlighted here, but nowhere else. Now, of course, if you had contour levels that you wanted to mark that are already displayed within the map, you can just simply select them, right click, apply contour style. So for example, if I go through different fault blocks here, I know what value I need to apply, you can do that here. Quite often we find that the users need to add in a particular level, first of all, within the contours tab. And then what you can do, if you just need to deselect them, you just right click again and turn that off. Right click and turn off apply contour style. Okay, so let me make sure my wells are displayed again. Now the other tip I was wanting to show you is just the new feature, selection feature within overpost correction. So if I, for example, select my B wells, I'm going to right click and choose overpost correction. This will open up this window here. Now you've got this is an original icon where you can select your labels by a rectangle. So for example, like that. But we've also added in this new icon here, so you can now loop select just by drawing an arbitrary polygon. If I do that, double click there, what I could then do is I could choose to align my text vertically or horizontally, such as something shown there. If I click OK, it will align all of my text. In this instance, I don't really want to do that. I'm fine with my contours in the original location, so I'll just turn that off by clicking undo. But that's just a wee feature that I just wanted to show. Now, the next mapping feature I want to highlight is our ability to directly display DEM or bathymetry data. So if I go to display, and in this case, I'm going to choose grid and sunshaded. So down here, I select my data source and I choose raster file. I'll go to image source and select my geotiff. In this instance, it's already remembered my pre-existing settings, so I've just shallowed the sun angle a bit, and I've also applied a colour scheme that uses a colour gradient. I'm going to change this to show one that's more suitable for bathymetry data, and that's fine, so I'll just click apply. Okay, so you can see that it's obviously added something in. I'll change my extent so we can see that a bit better. And there we go. You can see that this has obviously been rendered to a high resolution area, and it's showing out my bathymetry detail in a good high resolution amount of detail. So I'll just move this to the bottom of my display list, so we can complement that, our cultural data with a reasonable backdrop. And then the next feature I want to show is the ability to now complement our maps with supplementary PDF information. You'll see there's a new icon up here, and you can also, if you click display, there's that option now for PDF. It's remembered my settings from previously, so just to show, you can easily just scroll through your pages and the preview will update appropriately, so you can make sure that you've selected the right PDF page. You can also carry out any rotations you need, or display a transparency to the background or the actual page itself. And then you can also choose to place it within the map or within the title bar. In this instance, I'm going to choose the title bar and I'll just click apply. You can see that it's been added here. I can, if I really want to, I can, oh, sorry, that was the wrong feature. If I select my PDF, I can choose to increase or decrease the size. In this instance, I'll just move this up slightly. And I'll just pop this here. And I'll maybe move my north arrow. If I just pop that down there for now. Okay, so there we go. We've now got some additional information. I could also choose to, if I wanted to, I could just use some of these tools up here to draw arrows, to point out or highlight where spatially this chart information is coming from. But I'm happy with that for now. Now, the final feature I just want to show you is the new ability to display outlines within the location map. So if I go to this icon up here, which will allow me to add in a location map. Okay, what I'll do is I'll change my CRS so it's the same as the current map. And I'll also make my base map type just to show my counties. Let me decrease the thickness of that. And then the next thing I want to do is let me just refresh this window. Now, it didn't take this long yesterday, so hopefully it will update. Perfect. And then the next thing I want to do is I'm going to turn on additional shapes. So we're underneath the location tab. We've got our map extent shown in orange, so we can see our the area that our map canvas covers. And then I also want to add in an additional shape that reflects my project boundary. So that's this area around here. You can see from this drop-down list that we support a huge variety of file formats. I'm going to choose shapefile, and it's already linked to my project boundary. I've applied that I want this to be filled in black, so that's fine there. And then the next thing I'm just going to do is I'll just zoom in on my locator map a bit more. Okay, and let me just zoom in. You can start to see the project boundary there. I'll just zoom in a tiny bit more and I'll click OK. Okay, so I'll just move this over here and I'll just increase the size slightly. So yeah, there we go. We can just about see the project boundary in black, and it obviously represents this area around here. Let me turn that on appropriately and turn off the grid and the wells so you can see that a bit clearly. So we've now got that link. We've got the link between our map canvas, which is outlined and shown in our legend, represents our project boundary, and we can also see that within our locator map as shown up here. Okay, now that's everything I was wanting to show in terms of the demo. Now the next thing I was just wanting to summarize with a couple of final thoughts. So it's important to really consider the message of your map and who the audience is. Is it a joint venture partner, a shareholder, or your colleagues? What information do you need to show, and would the map benefit from including supplementary information stored in a PDF? With 2020, it's much easier to highlight individual contours, and you can take advantage of the new display formats to make your map more informative, whilst also experimenting with the new colour gradients available. So I hope you found this session informative. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat log. Thank you for your attention, and also another thing to highlight is just our portal. It's something that we refer to quite a lot. It's got a huge amount of how-to documentation, old webinars and how-to videos, so please do take a look at that stuff. And if you have any questions at a later date, please do email support@petrosys.com.au. Okay, well, thank you very much for your attention, everyone, and have a good day. Goodbye.